Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Kalica and today we're doing r/TheTruthIsHere. This is a subreddit I had never heard about before, so I'll give you a brief description of what you're in for. The Truth Is Here is a database for personal encounters with the unknown. We archive non-fiction stories dealing with spirits, paranormal, strange happenings and unexplained sightings. So I have sorted by the top stories this year and let's get into it. Coworker opened the door. What was behind it will haunt me forever. So, I'm a long-time reader, first-time poster, so forgive me if my story isn't really that detailed or intriguing. A few years ago when I was 16 or 17, I worked in a restaurant as a waitress. There were two locations, one in my town, which I'll call Restaurant A, and one in a town about 30 minutes away, Restaurant B. I should mention that Restaurant B is located in a rougher area, and many of my co-workers weren't from the best of backgrounds. Nonetheless, they were sweet people and I trusted them. I was trusted as a manager on Thursdays at Restaurant B, which usually meant I was the cashier, server, manager, and the only other person would be the cook, which I'll call Dave. In the restaurant, there is a front glass door that customers use and a back wood door, no window in the door, we use to take out trash and such. One day, we had no business, and I was in the kitchen with Dave and another cook that was about to leave. We're standing around talking, with Dave right in front of the back door, the other cook to the side of the door, and me about 5 feet away from Dave in line with the door. He had a bag of trash in his hand, and he was going to take it out. He opened the door while still facing me and talking, and behind the door was a person. It was clearly a person in a grey t-shirt, jeans and a black hat. I saw him for a split second, long enough to know someone was there, and then Dave saw my face and turned around, which blocked my view, and the guy was gone. The other cook saw my face turn white as a sheet when Dave had opened the door and joked that I looked like I had just seen a ghost. Oh, the irony. While Dave started looking around to see what I could have seen. I actually started panicking. I have severe anxiety and a panic disorder, and Dave was trying to calm me down, but he also seemed really freaked out. He asked me what I had saw. I told him I saw someone. I described the person, and what he told me next will never leave me. Dave started crying and ran out the door with his phone in his hand. He was outside for nearly half an hour, and when he came back in he was calmer but still nervous. He told me that roughly 10 years ago he and his friend were in a horrible car accident, which ended with his friend dying. He told me the person I described standing outside the door was wearing the exact outfit his friend had died in, and apparently, I wasn't the first person to see the ghost of his friend. Dave told me that whenever something were to happen to anyone in his family, his friend would show up to either him or his family. For example, one time he saw the ghost of his friend and literally a minute later his phone rang and he found out his father had suffered a massive heart attack. When he had went out the door, he was calling his family to make sure everyone was okay. Luckily they were, but not even 2 days later, he found out his wife had miscarried. As if that wasn't weird enough, the same night I saw the ghost, something else weird happened that I believe was paranormal, but I also understand it could have been paranoia. I was up front of the register, still shaken up, and a huge crow was hovering outside of the front door. It was so weird, it literally was just flying in place. It suddenly flew away, and then a really strange looking man approached the door and opened it wide, but didn't enter. He had the creepiest smile on his face the entire time. Moments later, the crow was back, and it almost came in the restaurant, but another customer swatted it away. The man literally turned around and left, didn't order anything, and didn't say a word. I know it sounds unbelievable, but I'm just hoping someone reads this and understands that what I went through is real, because everyone I know doesn't believe in the paranormal and thinks I'm just imagining things. My dad saved my godbrother's life because he had a strange feeling. I wasn't sure where to post this, so I thought I'd put it here. This happened to my dad roughly 30 years ago. My dad had been out at work all day and was cold, wet, tired, and finally on his way home. We have some close family friends that lived about a mile away from us at that time. My dad is driving home, and he's on 20th Street, getting very close, perhaps a mile from our house. Now, both of our families live off of 20th, but in different neighbourhoods. The route my dad took home that night would have taken him past our friend's neighbourhood first. As he's sitting at the intersection near our friend's neighbourhood, waiting for the light, he suddenly gets this very strange and overwhelming urge to stop at their house first. Why? He's cold, wet, tired, hungry. He's had a long day. He just wants to go home. But this feeling is too strong to ignore. So when the light turns green, he drives down the street and turns off into their neighbourhood. He gets to their house and, as usual, just walks in. The way their house is set up, there's a short entry hall that opens up to the left of the living room, A few feet further in on the right is a hallway where the bedrooms are. Straight ahead is the dining room. Through the dining room and to the left is the kitchen, and through the kitchen is the family room. So my dad walks in and stops. Then off to the right down the hall, he hears a strange noise. It's not very loud, so he turns to look. At the end of the dark hallway, he sees my godbrother Jerry, who was a year and a half old or so, sitting on the floor with his back to the wall facing my dad. My dad walks towards him and is trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Why is he down here all by himself? What's this noise he's making? He finally gets close enough to realise that he's choking. So my dad grabs Jerry and starts skip hopping. My dad is an amputee and he can't run. The best he can do is kind of quick skip hop towards the other end of the house, yelling for Jerry's parents. He gets Jerry to the kitchen, grabs him by the ankles and holds him upside down over the sink. Jerry is pretty purpley blue by this point. Jerry's parents, who had been in the family room, came running. They're confused and scared, and my dad whacks Jerry in the back in an attempt to dislodge whatever is causing him to choke. Nothing happens. He turns to Jerry's dad and says, "If his ribs break, I don't want to be the one to break him. Hit him. Hard." So Jerry's dad hauls off and whacks him on the back, and out comes a rock. Thankfully, no ribs were broken. So Jerry starts breathing again. Everyone is calming down, and Jerry's dad says to my dad, "Where the hell did you come from?" My dad just kind of shook his head and told him about the feeling he had. To this day, he is still amazed by the whole thing. I don't know the circumstances that caused Jerry to be on the opposite end of the house from his parents by himself. Maybe he was supposed to be in bed and climbed out, or maybe he just wandered off and no one noticed. As far as I know, my dad hasn't had anything else like that happen to him. If he has, he hasn't told the story. I would have kicked myself for posting here a year ago, but here goes nothing. My dog might have pulled a Lazarus. 2 weeks ago, my little dog Max died. He was diagnosed with an illness a few months ago and an uncertain prognosis, but I could tell the end was coming. My best friend was going to pick me up at 9 AM on Friday morning, and I was going to have him put to sleep as his illness was progressing and his quality of life had declined severely. However, the night before we were going to take him, he passed in his sleep, which I thought was a blessing. He was in his bed right beside me. Me and my two best friends had a nice little funeral service in my backyard that evening, where we buried him and told silly stories about our little buddy. The whole thing was bittersweet. We shed a lot of tears, but we also had champagne and talked about his little sassy yappy self. 2 nights after Max's death, me and my young daughter were in the kitchen playing pretend lemonade stand. She was standing and I was sitting on the floor. When I pushed up off the floor and twisted around to get up, I saw a 3D grey, almost opaque, but just so slightly transparent version of Max. He walked from behind the kitchen island and walked right up to the kitchen door that leads to the back porch and just kind of slowly faded through it. There were no defining features such as a nose, eyes or mouth, but the body shape, head shape, ear shape and gait were a complete giveaway that it was Max. He's been mine for 11 years, so I know his body and his walk as good as my own. I was pretty jarred, but wrote it off quickly as my grieving brain playing tricks on me. Until my 3-year-old looked up at me and said, exact quote, "Mama, was that black shadow Max? How did he go through the door?" I was gobsmacked. If I had seen him myself, I wouldn't have given it much thought, but the fact that my toddler saw him too makes me think that my brain was not playing tricks on me. I still feel so weird about it. My toddler thinks it was the coolest thing ever and won't stop talking about it. Although now she's confused because I reiterated to her a dozen times in an age-appropriate way that Max was not coming back after we buried him. Now she keeps saying I lied to her. Anyway, this story is 100% true. It happened less than 2 weeks ago. Maybe folie deux, but I don't think so. Any similar stories? I sort of have a similar story. Kinda, but not really. It does involve a pet though. I want to preface this by saying that I don't believe in anything paranormal. I don't believe in ghosts or psychics or anything like that. I used to when I was younger, but I think that's because I wanted to believe there was some way of communicating with people who had passed. So, anyway, I would have been around 13 or 14, I believe. In the house that I used to live, there was a long window on each side of the front door. So I was minding my business, doing my teenage thing, when I seen out the window that there was an owl sitting on the doorstep, in broad daylight, just chilling there, and I sat on the other side of the glass just looking at it for ages. Eventually it flew away, but it was there for a really long time. I told my dad about it, and he said that owls showing up in daylight is supposed to be some sort of omen, but I didn't think much of it. So it was the next day at school, and I had the worst stomach pain. I had thrown up, and didn't know what the hell was wrong with me. All I knew is that I needed to go home. I went to the school nurse and told her, I need to go home, right now. Please call my dad. I think she could tell I wasn't messing around because she didn't ask me any other questions. I got into my dad's car, he drove me home, and I went straight to bed. Still in my school uniform, still had my shoes on and everything. A couple of minutes later, I hear my dad calling me from downstairs. He's telling me to come down, and I shout back at him that I'm not well and I just want to go to sleep. He says it's important, and I drag myself out of bed and he's standing at the bottom of the stairs. I walk down, really grumpy, and ask him what is so important. He tells me to give him a hug. So I do. And then he points to his right at my bird's cage, and my little cockatiel that I'd had for years was lying at the bottom of his cage. I don't remember feeling sick anymore. I think at that point grief and sadness took over. I got a shoebox, and my dad dug a hole in the garden and we had a small funeral. I remembered the owl a few days later and googled it, and apparently owls are viewed as omens of bad luck, ill health, or death. Which I thought was pretty crazy, since it was the only time I'd seen an owl up that close, and it was sitting on my freaking doorstep. Do you have any stories like this? Please let me know in the comments. I love stories about the paranormal, or that gut feeling you have, like when someone walks into the room and you get a chill, and then you find out that that person is like a murderer or something. Oddly specific, but if you do, please let me know. Okay, so that's all for r/TheTruthIsHere. I really hope you did enjoy it. As always, if you do want to see more content like this, then please do subscribe. My Twitter, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description, and any support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!